Welcome to the Pedal Collaborative podcast. We're so glad you're here. Hey everybody, welcome to the Pedal Collaborative podcast. I am your co-host Alan with my partner in crime Paul, and today we have a special treat for you all. With us today are the brains behind Meris. We have Terry and Angelo. How are you guys today?
We're good, man.
Doing
Thank you so much for having us on.
You're welcome. I almost called you boys. I have no idea why. Maybe it's from maybe just nerves. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation. I know a lot of our listeners, both on the podcast and with the YouTube channel that we have, I mean, we're all Meris fans, and I think to date the creative episode that we did with Gina has been like our highest listened to episode. So I mean, there's no competition between you two, but in terms of, you know, the guys versus the girls. But hey, if you guys can beat that, then you can just kind of gloat at the office and say our episode was better. I don't know. It's up to you.
No, that's awesome to hear. That's my favorite episode too. So yeah. I don't think we'll be beating it today. Definitely.
Well, again, super excited that you are here. You know, Paul and I have been fans. I mean, we've been fans since before the LVX came out. But I know for me personally, the LVX kind of put you guys on the map in terms of, all right, this is my go-to. This is hands down. This is the platform that just beats everything else. So wanting to get you both on here to talk about kind of the brains behind it. And we can go as nerdy, as deep as you want. Doesn't mean I'll understand it. But we definitely have listeners that understand a lot of those things. And I wanted to, Paul and I both wanted you folks to be on here and just kind of talk about that. So,
and while we talk about going nerdy and deep, I don't know that anyone will ever be able to beat Steve Demidash's episode he had with us, where he went into the weeds on circuitry, where I was like, I'm losing you, but I hope that people like this.
Fun.
So
yeah. But before we get there, why don't you both just give us a quick, flyby of your career in the effects world, engineering and really what got you to where you are in terms of creating Meris. I mean, Paul and I know a little bit of it, but I'd love to hear it from your standpoint, and obviously our listeners, the more that they can understand, the better too. So go right ahead.
It goes way back. I think for both of us, Angelo and I grew up in similar kind of time frame. Born in the late 70s, grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I think both got guitars around the same time too. Maybe Angelo a little bit sooner than me, but I had really cool dad who loved music and always had good records around, and also had an uncle who played guitar and was in bands and stuff. So I always was interested and admired all his gear that he had in his room. I was just fascinated with everything that was in there, not knowing what it was. Being 6, 7, 8 years old and going in his room and just seeing all this. He had like a cool Tascam 4-track and mixers and just one guitar and like a Music Man amp. Stuff looking back that he had an ADA flanger, he had a Crybaby pedal, and so that made an impression on me for sure. Growing up in Oxnard, actually, just south of us, where we're at in Ventura right now, and then my dad and mom eventually got me a guitar when I was, I think, 12 or 13, and I just like dove into it and loved it. And that's after I got that, that's all I wanted to do in life, just anything to do with guitar. So I quickly discovered that I was always kind of a tinkerer kid, and I quickly discovered that I liked gear just as much as playing guitar. So became obsessed with I got the Craig Anderton book and built a bunch of things. I had no idea what I was doing. Just loved studying schematics and looking at this really technical stuff. I just was immediately interested in it. Fast forward, because to the time when I'm about 16, and I convinced a local amp technician to give me a job. And he was awesome. He taught me so much. His name was Pat Bewley, and just a great guy. And I just learned so much working on amps and countless mixers and synths, and just, you know, replacing potentiometers all day long and broken things. And I just loved everything about it. Actually, I couldn't wait to leave school to get to work. So
that's a pretty good indication of something cool. I can't wait to work.
yeah. I could not wait to get to work, and I didn't want to go back to school after that. But I did start college, and then after a few years, I dropped out of college to I basically got my dream job offer at Line6, you know, the amp company, and I became engineering tech in the engineering department there, and got to work with amazing, you know, engineers and mentors. And then one mentor in particular, Michelle, he's one of the founders of the company, was so generous and nice and welcoming, and he gave me chances to actually start designing things. So I knew enough at that point to you know, learn how to lay out circuit boards and start putting things together, and eventually he taught me enough to encourage me to actually, you know, start to write code and all this cool stuff at Line6. It was just an amazing opportunity. So that is, I guess, the most condensed version of my early history. And I'll let Angelo.
We, like Terry said, very similar trajectories. I grew up outside of Detroit, in a immigrant Italian family, and it was a lot of depression mindset. And the idea was you got to learn to play an instrument so you don't starve. So as a little kid,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, as a little kid, I mean, that was kind of like the ethos. Like my dad was, he played accordion. You know, he was, and it was always fun to see him play. But yeah, so for me, they said, okay, they handed me a guitar, and they're like, you got to learn this so you don't like die later on in life, because they experienced that through World War II, and, you know, just through the hardship. And so I got a guitar, and at first it was, you know, taking lessons as a kid. I was like, this is a drag. You know, it was like the old school Mel Bay books, and like, this is no fun, until like my interest changed. And as soon as, like, around the same age as Terry, like around, you know, 12 or 13, and then that's all my life became about, is just guitar. Mm-hmm. And then it was all about, we're not paying for lessons anymore. So it quickly switched from mandatory lessons to, we're not paying for this. So I started self-financing lessons, and just, but yeah, like, you know, diving into magazines, Guitar World, Guitar Player, just kind of obsessed with everything guitar, obsessed with technology, you know, obsessed and just kind of dreaming about all those like crazy racks back then. Like the DSP technology was just like, you know, it was kind of unattainable. Like the price tag was just so high. So yeah, similarly, you know, going through high school, just focused on guitar, and I, you know, when it came time to exit high school, my dad's like, hey, you know, you're okay at math. You better get an engineering degree. I mean, they were nervous I was just going to go full musician. Yeah. And so they're like,
God forbid.
Yeah. I know.
I love how with like, you need to learn music to survive, to like, dear God, no, please stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a wild swing. And I just liked it too much. So anyways, so I did that. I went, University of Michigan, got my electrical engineering degree. And then joined Line6 around the same time as Terry. I joined in 99.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Started doing DSP right away. I started, the first DSP code I wrote was DL4 was brand new. And so I wrote a bunch of like self-test routines inside the DL4 code, and then took on the ones after that, like the MM4 and the DM4, and then those just kind of became my baby, and then just worked on pretty much all the, effect pedals from then on, so all the 4x4 series, the Rack series, the Tonecore series. And yeah, similar to Terry, like so grateful for the mentorship experience. It was the most generous place to learn and just cut your teeth on DSP and like just experiment and come up with new ideas and try different things out. They were really like welcoming of like, hey, this is a cool idea. Let's see what we can do with it. Let's put it in one of our products. And so
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. I guess also for that time frame wise, you guys were like kind of right after the first pod launched when you started at Line 6. Am I right there?
Yep.
I feel nostalgic you guys talking about those pedals. That's like we've done episodes about like our background early on in the podcast, and like I think Line 6 riddled both of our early playing history of exploring pedals because they were kind of like the coolest thing in town in the 90s and early 2000s.
It was a couple of years after the pod. It seemed like they were growing really fast at the time, and we got in right 99 2000. It was like a really good time to join the team, but yeah, the pod was kind of already like, they were successful already. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. And the DL4 was like my first, it was my first DSP-based effect pedal, and I loved that thing.
I think it was for a lot of people. Like it was definitely like a gateway drug to DSP on pedal boards.
Yeah, well, and then I think for us, the exact arrow we can draw is from getting a DL4 and getting addicted to delay, and then eventually having an LVX as sort of
nice.
The current version of being addicted to delay and all the things delay can do for your sound. So I think we can draw a straight line there, Alan.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're at Line 6. Sorry, we cut you off, Angelo.
Yeah, sorry, I got excited about the Line 6 history and I interrupted. So
and at Line 6, so I was became their software director, just was in charge of their DSP and sound design departments. But Terry had left to found Strymon. And
Angelo's not talking about the more fun part where we we became friends at Line 6 and like talked about goofy comedy and like Mr. Show, a lot of Mr. Show inside jokes.
Absolutely.
And, tons of stuff.
Yeah, we bonded definitely while we were there.
Nice. Yeah. Nice.
We got to work together on some insane channel stuff that featured the insane channel.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Spyder 2 amplifier.
Yeah. Yeah.
And eventually I just had a little whippersnapper me. I had ambitions to kind of start my own thing, and I was working on, well, I guess at Line 6, the way the engineering department was structured, I didn't have, as grateful as I am for all the learning experience, I didn't have a ton of input over what the finished product was. So I really wanted to have more control over that. So I quit Line 6, and Gina helped me start Strymon, like in our 2-bedroom apartment. And then that was started off super humbly, with me building everything by myself with the Strymon name on it, which was just a first little preamp mod project, and then quickly evolved into more sophisticated pedals with the damage control guys. And I worked on everything, including Timeline, and Gina branded all of that stuff, and logos, Strymon name, Strymon logo, and we worked on that up until the Big Sky, and then we left, and then formed Meris. I finally bugged Angelo enough times to where he said yes, that he was going to come work with us.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, lots of sushi lunches,
Mm.
and yeah, no,
That's
super
fantastic.
grateful. Yeah.
So let's pause a quick sec because I know we talked about this on the episode with Gina. Line 6 did a lot, with the DSP world when it comes to effects. But I don't think anything was as influential in those we'll call them the Middle Ages of DSP in terms of what Strymon did, what Terry, you as you and Gina designed, like the timeline and the big sky and the marketing beside it, and just sonically they were fantastic for the time. They were so good, but to be able to have created a product over a decade ago that still holds its own, is just, I mean, hats off to you. That was fantastic, and I think it will lead into some of the questions I have about. I mean, do you guys call it the X series, like the LVX, MercuryX, Enzo X? How do you guys refer to it as?
Yeah, not officially. It just kind of evolved into that, because of LVX. Because honestly, like when we were designing that product, the easiest name would have been Polymoon something,
Mm-hmm.
because it was our next delay, and maybe Polymoon X was brought up, but me and Angelo were kind of stubborn about it, thinking that, oh, this is not a polymoon though. This is way, polymoon's a very small part of what this can do, and it's not really, it's not the same thing conceptually as Polymoon was either. So we went with LVX. MercuryX became more of a superset of, and more flexibility of reverbs that we had worked on, that we had created before, and then adding more things to it. Enzo X is even more of a grand, has the original Enzo as its grandfather, and then the more expanded version now. So yeah, that's a long answer to say that this was kind of an accident for things to become X.
Sure. Well, I mean, I refer to it as the X series. So
we did always intend for this to be multiple pedals and in one form factor, though. That's for sure.
Well, let's go to that in a second. I don't want to get too far ahead. Leaving Strymon, starting Meris, and creating what is, I mean, you have the Polymoon, you have the Mercury 7, you have the Hedra, you have the Enzo, and the Ottobit Jr. Right? Were those the first pieces in, or had you done some of the 500 series that you did?
Oh, we did the 500 series first. We did kind of out of the gate. I had an idea for a mic preamp that would integrate pedals into your recording system, and that was already kind of ready on day one when we launched, and we started shipping it just a few weeks after we started the company officially, I think. And then we started working pretty soon on like a 500 series DSP platform that we could bring high quality effects to the hardware recording world, because they had been kind of absent for a long time, where we would go into amazing recording studios and see all these pieces of staple gear, but they were 20, 30-year-old DSP devices that were really limited. They sounded good, but like nothing had advanced because everything was happening in plugins. So we decided to try the studio thing, Pro Audio. It was like new for us because we were pretty focused on guitar products, as one should be. Yeah, and synthesizer products, but so Pro Audio was it was nice because we got to invest a little bit more development and material costs into higher quality components that you could normally put in a low cost pedal. So we designed a super clean, super nice, high end, low noise system for the studio, and then we're able to migrate that down into lower cost pedals, or things with that don't have all of the advantages that you have in studio, like balanced XLR and bipolar power supplies. You're kind of stuck at 9 volts in the pedal world. So yeah, that was, I think it was, I don't regret starting in the studio and then going down from there at all, because it just gave us a really clean platform.
Yeah, it was like an open space too, like you're saying. No one was doing reverb in 500 series, and it's nice to focus just purely on delivering the highest quality audio, the highest quality algorithms, making it really focused for the studio. So it was a cool place to start.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and I think it shows like being able to start there and then bringing that down into your smaller pedals. And I remember like the first time. Well, let me pause. Here is how Paul and I do things when it comes to gear acquisition. You ready? It's pretty simple. I get a whiff that something's coming out and my credit card is out. I don't care what it is. I mean, I do. There's certain companies that I don't even bother with, but when I saw, I guess I had taken a hiatus and playing and came back, and then you all had already come out with all of the pedals on the small version. And so as soon as I'm like, oh my God, I'm buying that. I'm buying that. Paul's the kind of guy that he's like, well, let me see what all it does. Let me see if I'm gonna like it. Is it gonna replace what I'm already using? Like you try it first, Alan, and then I'll jump in.
I'm the grounded one of the two of us, because I think about, will I use this in my playing? How's it gonna make my experience better? I actually, until recently, even though we have had all of them, I just have had a Mercury 7 on my board, just because I know how to use it exactly how I want it to make the sounds I need for reverb.
Yeah, cool.
I actually just recently jumped to the MercuryX because Alan did something with it that made me realize I needed it. So
that's cool.
In lifetime.
Yeah. But I think it was it would have been the Polymoon that I got first.
Okay.
Because thanks to the DL4, like I'm a delay hound. And I remember like plugging it in and being like, oh my God, this is the best sounding delay platform I have ever heard. Absolutely loved it. Less loved like the secondary functions, because my brain just could not, like, wait, what was I doing? Loved it, absolutely loved it. And I had it. I kept it for a long time. I think until the LVX came out, because then when I saw it, I saw the LVX as kind of the evolution of that into something grander. And then when I'm like, wait a second, there's a screen, I can dial in things. There's not really secondary, and there's presets. Done, sold. So got that. Never looked back myself. But so let's jump over to how you took. I mean, I guess the progression makes sense. You started with the 500 series, kind of created some of the backbone of how you're doing things, jumped into the small pedals, and very strategically came out with the LVX, and then the MercuryX and then the Enzo X. But I think, Angela, I think you had said it a bit ago, or maybe it was Terry, I apologize, but wanting to start with, you started with the LVX, but you always had the intention of it being a platform for multiple pedals. I don't think that was an easy task to do, especially from both a hardware and a software standpoint. So can you just give us a kind of like, what were some of the thought process on the hardware side that led you to choose kind of the way that you chose to build this platform, hardware specific?
I mean, as far as the hardware, we started developing this in this platform in right at the beginning of 2020, a little bit before that maybe, but we had kind of already selected what processor we wanted to use at the time. And this is getting into the weeds of the hardware, which is I'm totally comfortable with.
Yeah,
but we kind of chose the fastest. If you're looking at basically a system that can do audio processing, we chose the fastest and best fit ARM processor that was available at the time, the newest one. That you could there was faster processors that you get for like a phone, but then those need to run like Linux, like an operating system that is designed to do a bunch of different things, networking, graphics and all these things that we didn't care as much about. We wanted to make the basically like like if you're thinking in terms of a race car, you design your car to do one thing. Like we wanted to design this to do high powered audio processing first and kind of everything else secondary.
Sure. Yeah.
The graphics became important once we had a better idea of what the UI was going to be, but the graphics didn't end up taking a ton of resources. So basically, we write our own operating system, so we control every bit of it so that the audio can be just as powerful as possible and fast and can do all the things we want to do with it, basically. So at that time, it was just, okay, what's the fastest ARM processor? That we had come from using different processors that are dedicated DSP devices, like you've probably heard of a Shark.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't advancing as fast as like the ARM family of processors. So we decided to kind of jump onto that road because the roadmap was so much more exponential.
Yeah,
I can back up a little bit to the in the Strymon days. I was one of 4 engineers, and I really didn't do much electronic hardware or audio, software. So at that time, I was more involved in the product definition, and I did all the industrial design. And Gina and I would collaborate on the industrial design. So it was more like the way the product looked and the way that the product worked on Timeline. Sure. And there was a different DSP engineer. And one of the other things about starting Meris was like, oh, if I start Meris, I can work with my favorite DSP engineer, which is Angelo. So that was another big reason to start a new thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was actually just going to ask the question of like division of labor amongst you guys, because it sounds like you both know a lot about both sides of the game. It sounds like that. You guys can speak to that a bit. I wanted to hear more about that too when you're talking there.
Yeah, first I just want to acknowledge Terry. It's super flattering for him to say that. He's worked with some really amazing DSP guys. And I remember the day that Terry left Line6. I'm like, man, I hope we can work again. I really, really was bummed out when he was leaving, but super excited to see like what he was going to come up with. Yeah, I just to echo what Terry's saying, like using the ARM platform was kind of different. Like all the other DSP based effects out there, we're using traditional DSPs, and so it was kind of a forward-thinking thing to jump onto ARM. And it's like Terry said, the attractive thing about it was the growth rate, kind of the acceleration of the family. Yeah, we work like especially on everything that's like side by side. So I do firmware coding, and Terry does the hardware. But especially in the genesis of a product, it's it's focused on the same thing, and it's really kind of in service of getting the platform up and running. Yeah, writing our own called bare metal because you're right close to the hardware. So it's everything that is focused on getting the most performance out of the part, being in control of every single little thing, and not having someone else's firmware or someone else's system design like in the way of what you want to do on the part. So it's having total control of that is super important to us.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered your question.
I think did Paul answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, you asked the question about how they made the choice to get to the hardware, and it sounds like the choice was, let's think of the most progressive thing that's going to be growing and scalable in a way that's not sort of stuck. Because that actually, it's sort of a little off the track of talking hardware and software and DSP. But I did have a question, like I was talking with one of our friends, actually our designer who did our logo, about having you guys on, because he has not yet dove into Meris pedals, but he's borrowed a couple of mine. He's like, I have a question for them, actually. So I was like, what do you want to ask? And he's like, okay, so we use the analogy often that guitar pedals, since we all sort of started at when they were sort of a fledgling thing that grew to the huge market we have now of boutique. I use the analogy with craft beer a lot of, you had a few and now you have the many, and everybody has a New England IPA and a West Coast IPA. And the question I had, just kind of going off this, you guys clearly are forward thinking. You've designed some things that have changed the way I think about pedals and what they can do. How do you get that creative spark in such a saturated space? And also having like the history you guys do, you've played a lot of different stuff, you've built a lot of different things. Where's it come from?
So we consciously, I guess one of the thing, we consciously do things a certain way. We started with an idea of uniting art and engineering, which was from an art project and like an interview blog series that Gina and I did, kind of in between Strymon and Meris, where we interviewed artists that would do electronic art and art that maybe incorporated some code or some hardware, things that you couldn't do without an engineer artist or an engineer and an artist working together. So we wanted to, with every product, instead of just saying like, oh, I want to make a product that does, I guess, like at Line6, you want to make your amp sound, you want to make the Line6 model sound like a Marshall Plexi, or you want to make the delay model sound like a very specific Memory Man or something like that.
Yeah, emulation, cloning.
We were super burned out on that idea. So what we wanted to do was come up with an abstract concept and then apply that to a product. So like, oh, we love Commodore 64 games. We grew up with that, and Nintendo games and Sega Genesis and even Sega 8-bit. So we want to make a pedal where you plug in and it sounds like that. Or we want to make a pedal that makes you feel like you're in the movie Blade Runner, when you plug it in. Or so we would always consciously start from a concept and then turn that into a product, rather than having such a like a straightforward product idea. And that would kind of take you out of the box of just the music industry and like established kind of things that had been done a lot of times, and try to make something more unique. It just sounded like more fun to us, I guess.
Oh, sure.
We had the freedom to do whatever we want because we're a tiny company. So it sounded more fun to approach things from that angle.
Yeah. And there's such a wide library of things that are already available. Like there's so many like pedals that already do the job amazing. Like the Tube Screamer does a Tube Screamer amazing. Like, Tube Driver does, all these things that for us, the exciting thing is like, okay, well, what do we want? And what can we bring that is speaks about us personally, and kind of, it's not something that, and like Terry's saying, a lot of it was a Line6, burnout. And I want to be careful because it was it was a great experience that we're grateful for, but it was also, okay, I spent 13 years, diving into circuits and cloning circuits. There's so much more. And I still feel like there's so much more. There's still so much to explore in the realm of algorithms, in the realm of signal processing, in the realm of new tools. So having, just kind of the blessing of our, it's our own company, just having that opportunity to really explore, like, hey, what can we bring to the table that's missing? What are things that, we can fill this like little gap that no one else is kind of thinking about right now. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a cool framework too, the way you guys frame that out of, you're not necessarily looking to achieve a specific thing. You're sort of starting with your own personal interests and reverse engineering that into a cool sound. which I think we did when Gina was on. We talked a little bit about, like, I even like that you guys have a little sense of humor in things. Like when you open Predator, you have the Get to the Chop a little graphic going on, which made me very happy because I'm a sci-fi nerd. So every single thing you guys do, I'm like, oh man, they named it. And we went over there with Gina of even the LVX name coming out of the Isaac Asimov story. And I didn't realize that or put it together until she said it. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's just been in front of me the whole time.
insisting on Get to the Chopper in the app was Gina for sure all the way. I was like, oh wait, are you sure? Are you sure we're a professional company here?
And then also me love you guys even more.
The Predator name started as a joke that I did like a silly Photoshop of the Predator holding LVX and MercuryX, and
it just worked.
And then I joked with her that we should call it Predator, and she was like, okay, that's what we're calling it. And then I said, oh no, seriously, like let's call it something else. But it's fine.
It's a nice little pun off a preset editor, and then you get your own
preset editor.
Interest in there. It's great.
It is preset editor. That's
why
it
everybody
is.
listening to. Excuse me. I invited Gina to be a part of the party today, but she said she was too busy making Predator for Enzo X, so she
is. While we speak,
cool
she's working on she's working on finishing up Predator and also the video tutorial that goes along with it.
Awesome. I just told myself that I haven't checked our inbox at all today, Alan, when I said, oh, that's cool to know. But I want to...
We both have other jobs, too.
Yeah, I know we're also dancing around all over the place now, but I do want to talk about the Enzo X a little bit. So I think, I'm just going through your guys' lineup in my head. I think I've played with everything and had varying experiences of joy versus frustration with the single stomp boxes, just because alt functions. Actually, a common thing, I'd love to have you guys answer a question in a sec, is people being scared of Meris pedals because of alt function. I'm going to hold that up for now. But as soon as I dove into the LVX and eventually jumped into the MercuryX, when I started to get it and understand what was happening, and the screen visualization really helped me take some of the stuff you guys had going on in the smaller stomp boxes and really envision it in a way that didn't just expand, but you can really, like, the way the modules even work, you can really make some unique sounds that are outside of delay and reverb. And then getting into the Enzo X, I had actually just recently sold my original Enzo, sort of knowing this was coming just from your guys' little teasers with the little graphics from the Enzo that Alan pointed out to me. He's like, I think it's going to be an Enzo X. And I was like, I'm going to sell mine so I'm ready when the new one comes and I don't have like another one sitting around. And I loved the sounds out of the original Enzo, but I was always like, man, I wish I could see what's happening. So when you guys announced this and I saw what it was, I was like, this is probably going to be very cool. Alan got one, I think, very quickly, so we could have one to start making videos for the channel.
I told Gina, actually, here's my credit card. Just get me whatever's coming.
You did say that before we even knew what it was. He wasn't actually joking about that. He really does do that, but especially with your guys' stuff.
Oh yeah.
But so in experiencing the Enzo X now, because I actually just got one recently, my own, so we both have one. It is a little different than the other two in that it's the same form function, but it feels like it's an evolution a little bit. I wanted to just kind of ask you guys about the process of taking something that is distinctly a guitar synth pedal, which there's others out there, the Boss ones, even your own. But then also it's got its own synth engine, which I really love, being able to plug in a MIDI controller and build a patch that's really cool. What went into the evolution of this one? Because I do feel like it's like a different thing. And maybe, Alan, you can contextualize it a bit more because we've talked about this a bit. But
well, I think the context is, if you look at, as I mentioned, the LVX kind of being the evolutionary upgrade to a Polymoon, the MercuryX being that evolutionary upgrade to the MercuryX, both of those being time-based effects, they're very similar in how they create. And there's a lot of the same bits in those different modules that for me, when I got the MercuryX, I'm like, oh, this is just an extension of the LVX in my brain. So it's not, I don't have to relearn everything. So I took that same mentality and assumed the Enzo X would just be that same evolutionary expansion of the Enzo. And then I got it and I'm like, oh dear God, this is that, but so much more. And we're now into a territory that for me, I'm very fledgling when it comes to synthesis. And so I'm like, oh, I can't take my delay reverb knowledge and apply it to this one-to-one. there's some, I mean, honestly, the best reverb and delays are like I know you simplified what is in the Enzo X, but on the ambience module, they're like luscious. They're perfect. But it's very minimal in terms of that time base because there's so much emphasis on the synth side
Yeah.
of things. But yet you still crammed it. And I'm sorry that sounds off, but you still fit that into the same UI and hardware that you have with the LVX and MercuryX. It's a little mind blowing, and I can't wrap my head around it.
Thank you for the compliments. Yeah,
I think Angelo.
I think Angelo chose.
Afield, but...
I think Angelo chose some like the best bits and pieces to add little spice to the synth that's inside of Enzo X. And your question makes a lot of sense because the other piece of conceptualizing a product that we always did, in addition to coming from an abstract concept and bringing it into a product, is we always wanted to make something its own instrument. So Enzo, the original Enzo, was the first pedal of ours that was literally an instrument. It is a synthesizer inside that's just triggered with guitar notes, or any instrument notes with pitch tracking. So Enzo X is the evolution of that. It's literally an instrument with some extra, modularization of modifiers and ambient effects that you can add to your patch. But I think that's the difference that you're noticing, is that there's a beast living inside of Enzo X that is a sound generator, rather than a sound modifier.
That's appropriate.
And I think kind of what you're hinting at too is like the platform evolution from LVX, MercuryX to Enzo X. LVX and MercuryX were designed very much as modular systems because of our love of two things, of modular synths and racks, of just like routing and patch cables and patch phase and connecting everything together. So it was a natural evolution for the UI to then expand into what Enzo X is. The modularity really was something we had from the beginning. I would also say that the original Enzo pedal, you get 12 controls. You get the 6 front panel and the 6 alternate controls. But Enzo literally has hundreds of parameters under the hood.
Yeah.
And so Enzo X is a way of bringing those parameters to the user. So in the Enzo pedal, a lot of the decisions were made by us. Like, okay, well, we're going to constrain it. It can't be, 100 knob synth.
In a stomp box.
It's a 2-button stomp box. But underneath, inside there's tons and tons of choices, tons of parameters. So it is, I can imagine turning on the Enzo X and getting a glimpse of some of those deeper parameters that are more at home in the world of synthesizers, feeling like, oh, what is that? But I think that this UI have, especially the bubble view, is a good entryway of kind of contextualizing those synthesizer parameters in the world of guitar.
Yeah.
Because ultimately they are just, it's just levels and frequencies and stuff that you do on guitar pedals anyways. I hope that people, when they're experiencing Enzo X and maybe aren't coming at it from a pure synthesist background, get, kind of expand into that, have it be almost like a learning tool where you're learning, going through the presets, seeing why the presets sound the way they do, connecting that with all of these parameters, and just kind of just being awakened to that world of the synth world, the synthesis, their mindset of sound design. It's a different, it's very, very related, but it's a different set of tools. And that kind of brings us back to, doing something different, bringing those tools from another sound design realm and bringing it to guitar players. I mean, that's, I don't know, that's important to us. Like Terry said, having it be an instrument, having it be, a living thing that is now expanding what you can do as a guitar player.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was my experience. And I think like, when I first plugged in the Enzo X expecting something very similar to LVX and MercuryX, getting that initial similar experience and then finding the beast.
Yeah.
And then that initial, it's kind of like very first time I rode a roller coaster that went like upside down. I was super excited. And then you get to the crest and you're like, holy shit. And then like you start to go down, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, this is as much fun as I thought it was. Like, this is amazing. Which is kind of that full circle that for me with the Enzo X, like that little bit of intimidation quickly turned to excitement as I'm like, it can do this and it can do this. I think the day that I got it, Paul, I was like on the phone with him, like, Paul, did you know, like, you don't even need to plug a guitar in. You can just like put your like MIDIs in and like you can use it. It's a synth engine.
Yeah, we're like little kids at recess talking about the new toy we got. That's usually how our phone calls go.
Yeah.
But I will say, so I actually, well, you guys were starting the LVX in 2020 as COVID hit. I was actually a piano player before guitar, because like Angelo's experience, in my family, you had to play at least one instrument. That was like a requirement.
Yeah.
So I took piano lessons begrudgingly. And then during COVID, once I got a Squire Strat, piano went out the window. It's like, nope, I got a guitar now. I don't need this. But during COVID, I actually, as I think a lot of people, dove back into something they were into as a kid or maybe interested in. I got back into playing, and I specifically wanted to get into synthesizers because I'd like dabbled with MIDI controllers and played with stuff in VST world. And so I like went on a really crazy COVID 2020, 2022 journey of buying a bunch of different synthesizers and trying them out, trying to get different sounds. So when you guys put this out, I was like really stoked because it's sort of the like crossroads of where I've been the last few years. And I've been doing a lot of actually like soundtrack work for short films. And so synths become like your best friend. Being able to articulate some of those things with a guitar is a really neat experience to kind of take something I know really well, which is guitar, and something I'm sort of learning more and more every year with this, and being able to apply some of like subtractive synthesis to a guitar pedal. So I was really, really stoked. I had a question off of that though. So I can tell a lot, knowing sort of like your guys' interests, also the Blade Runner sound of the Mercury 7 is beautiful. I actually have a patch on my ASM Hedra synth that is the like Voint Conf Test sound.
Oh,
fun. When I first got the Mercury 7, I was like, patch it together and reverb this out.
Nice.
Is there any, actually, now I know we talked about this not being what you guys do, but are there any synth inspirations that sort of made the beast that is the engine of the Enzo X that you guys are like, I want to make some of these sounds that I love from the 70s, 80s, etc.?
Oh yeah, there's a bunch.
Yeah, 100%. Our mentors at Line6, the founders of Line6, Marcus and Michelle, are Oberheim guys. That's where they met. They met at Oberheim. Awesome. Yeah, they worked on some heavy, and that was a funny thing at Line6. Like, it was a guitar company and was very immersed in guitar culture, but you'd have these like legendary synths just like in the hallways and in people's offices. And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. So Oberheim, something that kind of dovetails into Blade Runner is obviously the Yamaha CS80. That's something like really, really close to our hearts. So yeah, all of those different platforms and different like vintage synths kind of rolled into it. All of Dave Smith's stuff.
Definitely pulled a little profit out of some of the poly patches when I was
absolutely.
This is cool.
Yeah, having the different filter choices. I mean, obviously Moog is a huge staple and inspiration. So all of those things are stuff that we grew up with. Stuff that we worked with some of the principal engineers who made the stuff way back in the day, and so it's all part of our heritage and kind of our interests. 100%.
Yeah,
super cool.
And Angelo, we don't really tout this very much publicly. I don't know why, but Angelo like invented some like incredible like DSP techniques to run the oscillators the way we do in the Enzo, and it's like sounds so fat. It sounds like analog, which is actually really challenging to do in DSP. And I've
never heard a mono synth emulation sound the way it does in this one, so that makes a lot of sense that it's something new. Because it is fat, like a real big oscillator sound. So wide.
We it's all our own custom, like novel, everything. All of our filters are our own design, and our oscillators. It's important to us to like, okay, this is going to be a real synth. Even in the Enzo, it's important to have it. It's a real oscillator. It's I think growing up, and I love, like, one of the early pedals I got it was like the Boss SYB3. And it's cool, and it's very influential, but it's not real oscillators. It's not real, it's some of the vintage synths were kind of, very, I'm sorry, not vintage synths, but vintage synth guitar pedals. When it came to a guitar synth pedal, it wasn't it was close, but it wasn't exact what a real vintage synth should do. So that's important to us, to have that kind of realism in there.
Yeah, it definitely shines through that you guys care that deeply about it. I've played quite a few of the synth pedals from different companies, and I always sort of feel like they sort of sound like early MIDI to me. Like, they don't sound like a real synth. They sound like an early MIDI version, or like even to a certain point, like an N64 video game soundtrack. And like,
which is cool. I mean,
it's cool.
I'm not trying to say anything disparaging about that stuff. I feel like with any pedal in the right hands, or with the right mindset, can be like an incredible, like, artistic statement. So it's not saying that the old pedals were bad somehow. It's just something that, like, oh, hey, like, let's make it a real synth.
Right.
Right. And that's why you can play it with the keyboard. It's like a legitimate, like, real.
Yeah, which is something that brought me quite a bit of joy, just like putting it on my desktop with a tiny MIDI controller. I'm like, I'm playing with a guitar pedal that's actually a synthesizer. I'd like told my wife, I was like, come check this out. It's new, different.
Andrew, I think you're speaking to some of the limitations that other pedals may have, just in terms of hardware, software, in DSP, that sort of thing. And knowing that there's some reference, some heritage and reference in how you all built the Enzo X, but it is definitely like a unique, original thing, and it's been super fun. Paul, I'm thinking back. You had said something a couple episodes back about how if somebody can't get a sound out of the timeline, then they're doing something wrong.
I did say that.
In
It
reference,
was you. I said you because you said you couldn't get something out of your timeline. I said you're doing something wrong.
Okay, that's right. I'm doing something wrong. But no, I think in bringing that full circle to this conversation, it is that, like, Meris has just unlocked the potential in guitar synth world, guitar synth pedal world, that there are virtually no limitations. I have yet, and I am amazed that you all chose an ARM processor from 2019, 2020 that's still here in 2025. Like, it's kicking ass and taking names. I've yet to find a limitation on what the LVX, MercuryX, or Enzo X can do, and I have pushed them to their limits. So I always tell people, like, when they're asking me about any of the three of the X series, it's like, no, like, start with the presets that come factory. Start with, then we do a lot of. It's interesting. You created pedals that aren't going after a specific sound, but the ability to actually emulate so many things because of that blank canvas that you created, has given us the opportunity to help new users. Like, well, hey, okay, well, you want that Memory Man sound in your LVX? Cool. Here's a patch that we made that you can get really close to that. Or you want, Paul just jumping up from the Mercury 7 to the MercuryX because I made a patch that kind of got that sound for him. It still gives complete creativity and flexibility for a user to be 100% original. Because, like you said, I think you said there's 100 different things you can change. I think it's more, but it's like, it's limitless. There's literally no limit to what you can do, which might sound daunting, but it really isn't, because, again, you go back to that UI, and it's so
I want
easy.
to piggyback off of what you were just saying, Alan, and I alluded to this question. I'm going to ask one more interview style question, and we'll rapid fire you guys with our end questions here that we do with every guest. But I alluded to earlier people being intimidated by Meris pedals, which I actually myself was, because like they sounded great whenever I watched a video, but I was like, oh man, I don't even know what to do with some of these. And then Alan started to shepherd me into them a bit because he's the more pioneering of the two of us. I've literally had a Strymon Timeline on my pedal board for the longest time because I knew exactly how to get every sound out of it. I have all my sounds, and I was like, oh man, I want to try the new thing, but I'm scared. And often you'll see on like forums people ask like, hey, I want this sound, and I'm the kind of guy who's like, well, you should try the Meris insert pedal here for what they're asking. And very frequently people are like, oh, I love how they sound, but I'm really intimidated by them. So as the guys who designed the thing, I have my answer that I answer. I'd love to hear your guys' answer to, hey, I really love the sound of this pedal, but I'm intimidated by it. How do you answer that if someone were to say that?
Yeah, I personally would say there's no reason to be scared at all. I think our stuff is easy to use, but I'm coming from a different perspective, I guess, than a lot of people. I think our stuff's easy to use. If you back up to, I know you mentioned alt functions, and I can tell the tale of alt functions. I don't think it's ever been told before, right?
Ooh, I like this.
But it actually started in the Strymon days. I think that the first pedal that ever had alt functions was the Brigadier. I'm not positive about this. You know,
I know that I know the L cap had the reverb hidden in it.
Well, yeah,
somewhere.
but that was after Brigadier. So basically, that was the first Strymon digital pedal, and we came out with it, and then we wanted to add filter control. Well, there was no more knobs, so I had I don't know whether it's at the time I thought it was a clever idea that you do a secondary function by holding 2 foot switches and put the filter control under the middle knob. I forget which knob that is right now. It might be feedback or something. But then on Capistan, I think we had secondary functions on every knob doing it the same way. And nobody complained. Nobody ever complained. As far as I know, I did.
I will say firsthand experience when I got that and learned that it felt like an Easter egg almost. Like I was like, oh my god, each thing had, like it was kind of like exciting.
Right. Yeah, it was. I thought it was fun and cool too, and yeah, like you said, like an Easter egg. The one thing that I didn't like about that was because it was kind of an afterthought design decision. Holding the 2 foot switches was kind of a pain while turning the knob. So when we started Meris, and at first we weren't even designing pedals, we were designing 500 series. Mm-hmm. I thought, okay, I want more than 6 knobs. So 1 button, and then you have 12 knobs. So we decided, we just ran with that kind of same concept. And then, here, I'm losing my train of thought a little bit, but okay. So we ran with that same kind of concept, just by putting alt on 1 button. And then the first pedals that we implemented that on were Ottobit Jr and Mercury 7, which is a pretty simple set of alt functions. I think once the Enzo came out, then the alt functions got a little deeper, but and then maybe harder for people to remember. And then I was like, oh man, now we went too far. Like maybe when you add a little bit too much sugar to a dish or too much salt to a dish or something like that. Right. But it's a really difficult design decision, sure. Because you want to make a small pedal, and you don't have room for 12 knobs or 20 knobs or 100 knobs like we could have put on the original Enzo. So we try to keep it. It was the best. It was the best way that we could implement a lot of knobs on a small pedal with no screen. Also, because personally, the weird thing about me is that I prefer to use pedals without screens. Actually, but until we came out with LVX. Then that was the first kind of UI that I enjoyed using with a screen on a pedal type of device, because I just love the little simple bubble kind of universe planetary UI that Gina created. It's just like nice to use.
Terry's a bubble guy too, Alan, like myself.
I love bubbles.
Do you
but yeah, that's the story of that's
get
the saga of the alt functions.
Yeah. Well, going back real quick though, like think about you said that you don't think anybody complained about the Brigadier or LCAP, but that was also like how many years ago, and was Reddit around?
That's true. I don't know.
I mean, it was around, but I feel like it wasn't ubiquitously the place for people to like commiserate and complain about things like this. So it was more just like the nerdiest guy you knew in your class answering everyone else's questions on the internet.
But I guess speaking to, I mean, I actually think our pedals are approachable on the surface, and then you can dive really deep. You can dive as deep or as shallow as you want. You can get good sounds and explore. And I mean, to me, I wouldn't want to limit myself with. I understand the simplicity of or the attractiveness of a simpler tool, but I just like variety, I guess.
And I think one of the things that even from the beginning, from the 500 series, they do so much, and like Terry's right, there's a lot to explore and discover, and that discovery was kind of baked into like the design, and to kind of help with that, every knob on the 500 series, the 2-button pedals, and extending into the our big box series, we have a neutral position on the knob. So if you turn the filter to max, for instance, on the Ottobit Jr, it really just goes away. Mm-hmm. It's like the filter's not even in circuit anymore. But it does it in a way that's kind of transparent. It doesn't feel, and same thing on like sample rate and decimation. You can just take them out of the equation. In that, to help the exploration and to kind of to help the sound design process, we put in kind of a neutral spot on every knob to kind of, the knobs do let you greatly impact the sound, but then if it's too much, you can take it away completely. Another thing that's important for us and that we've kept consistent throughout the 500 series, the 2-button series, and our new series of pedals.
You were about to say X series.
I was about to say X series because that's not something I've ever said until you brought it up, Alan. So internally, we call them Canyonero pedals. That was our we've been calling them Canyonero for the longest time.
I like that.
And then we've transitioned in house to calling them Big Box. But,
yeah. Well, now it's gonna be X.
Okay. Yeah, I'll adopt your nomenclature. But on all of those, to finish my thought, so 500 series, X series, and the 2-button pedals. What is important to us and to kind of help the process of sound design is everything is accessible on the box. Like there's no sounds that you need to attach something else to get to. There's no hidden stuff that you can only unlock with like a phone app or via MIDI. That regardless of what you're using, you can, and if you're just you alone with the pedal, with the device, you can get the full range of sounds from it. Predator now makes that extremely easy, but and it opens up the world to allowing libraries of sounds on your computer. But it was always important to us, one, that you can dial things back and dial things out of the picture, and that you don't need, if it's just you on stage, you don't need anything else to get to the full range of sounds that are available to you.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, because I know phone apps, I have quite a few pedals that I have never used the phone app, but I know they can do it.
Yeah.
Specifically, not disparaging them, but like the UA pedals that have that, I've never even thought about using the app because it's like, I just want to play with the pedal. I'll just play with the pedal. I don't need the app. And actually, like Terry, I am not usually a screen guy. The one and only screen pedal that was on my board for the longest time was the Strymon Timeline, and it was just like kind of
like you mentioned the Timeline. Timeline's a good pedal. It's still a great pedal. I mean, I worked on the Timeline, and so did Gina. It's just that we wanted to do like a huge expansion of what that can do. That at the time that pedal did a ton, but maybe just slightly more than a DL4,
right.
Maybe just a little bit of an advance of a DL4. We wanted to break out all of the different possibilities that are within a DL4, but confined on a rotary encoder, and then make those all accessible at once. So I think you guys mentioned too that you create presets for kind of like legacy effects, which is cool. That's like a need, and that's really our stuff can do that too, but that's really just a side effect of our design,
right?
Right. It's really just a side effect of us making it flexible enough to be a wide palette for artists, and then you can hone in on those sounds for sure, but it's just, like I said, like a side effect of the original design intent.
Yeah, that actually, my journey into LVX, I waited till you guys did the 10th anniversary black one because I like black pedals. So I was like, the white one's cool,
really sharp,
but I wanted the black one, and I'm really glad I waited because it looks real slick. And actually, anytime anyone sees my pedal board, they're like, "What is that one?" I know they have a blue and a white pedal. I was like, "This is actually an LVX, but it's black."
Nice, yeah. You can credit
it's all for
Gina.
bragging.
You can credit Gina for those, yeah.
They look really slick. But my journey into LVX was built around actually taking my own presets I'd had for 10 plus years on my timeline and just figuring out how to I was trying to learn the modules of the LVX of okay, I have this sound I've made. It's like a dual delay. This one does this and this one does that. How do I do that in this pedal? And I spent a good 3 months learning the LVX because I was so used to not having all this control. And I will say to Angelo's point about you don't need a MIDI controller or an app, I do love that the looper is fully functional on the LVX without having to have a switch. Because I like the timeline, you can have a 3-button switch and you access all those other features to halftime, reverse, which are very DL4-esque.
Yeah.
And having that just simply the practicality of pedal board real estate, of not having to cram something else on the board. It's kind of nice to I'm in the looper, I can halftime, I can hold, modify, I can do all the cool stuff.
Right, yeah.
So big fan of that.
Yeah. And to tie up the last question that Paul had about accessibility with your stuff. I mean, I know the 2 buttons have the alt overlays that people can get. So if anybody isn't aware of that, there are alt overlays that you can put them on the pedal, and you basically see what the functions are all there. So that's great.
Yeah, that's another Gina thing too. That was actually incredibly challenging product to design.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think of it because it just seems like a simple sheet, but getting the material right and getting it to stick right and not leave residue and that was really, really difficult.
I have that on my Mercury 7, and I actually it's just part of the pedal now to me. I forget that it's not there for everyone, because it does very seamlessly work as if it was supposed to be there. So kudos on that.
I'll take the blame for not putting all that silk screen on the actual product too, because I like minimal things, and I think all three of us do, and it just, with all of the,
it's a lot of words.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of stuff on there. I understand it's useful for sure.
Yeah, I will say the one that I most often forget is because I run both mono and stereo depending on what I'm doing.
Okay.
When I have to switch the Mercury 7 from mono to stereo, that's always, I'm like, how do I do this? I turn it on, I hold this. That's always the one I have to go back to the manual for, because I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, these are the kind of things we lose sleep over because
I figured I'd bring that up.
They're hard design decisions. And like Angelo said, we don't want to make someone resort to their phone or a computer to be forced to do something, because it just seems I personally don't like doing that. So
if hardware requires software, it sort of, I think, inhibits creativity in some way.
Yeah, it's all being part of the creative flow. Hey, I'm changing things. I'm here with the band and we're rehearsing and I'm changing this right now. And you don't need to go fire up a laptop or anything like that. You can if you want to, and that's available. But it's it's to keep you in the moment, is to have everything available.
Yeah, I actually have a synthesizer that sequencer requires you to have the software to change the tap division of your sequencer. And when I learned that, I was like, oh my gosh,
I need this. Yeah,
there's no button to switch it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was a really great answer, and I do agree. After initially myself being intimidated, I think you guys have, once you sort of get it, you get it. And it's also, I mean, something I've told people when I've been asked this question, how do you play their pedals? They're so confusing and intimidating. Is you also don't need to use all the functions to get great sounds out of the pedal. I have pedals that I actually literally use one setting on it. Not your like I have a few
Right,
chorus
right,
pedals
yeah.
where it's like I got my chorus sound, and I literally have never touched any of the secondary functions because I know what it does and it does it great.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I love that you guys have just basically unlocked what the pedals can do for the user to decide. You know, we had just did an interview last week with another SoCal guy who has a pedal coming out that it's Evan from OC Pedal Co. But he's got a distortion pedal coming out that he selected which gain setting is going to be on this thing.
yeah, there's
It's
no
not a
gain knob.
which in some ways is cool because then it's like, hey, this is where it's going to sound great. But it's the opposite of what you guys have done with your products, and you've basically unlocked everything so that us, the users, can determine what we want and find that, which is great.
So
yeah, I guess we give you the full kitchen experience. You know, all the ingredients, and there's and there's value in both ways. I think like LVX or MercuryX or Enzo X is kind of best of both worlds because you have all of that stuff available, but then you have, presets. So
yeah,
absolutely.
I actually will share my one anecdote about that, and then we're going to get into the final 3 questions here. But I had a hard time adopting to LVX because I was originally just using Alan's presets because he had it for like months before me. And I discovered that actually the biggest difference in the way we both approach. So I always say this on different episodes, like tone is mostly in your hands, and you have different hands than every other human on earth.
Yeah.
And so Alan's filters, he always had a filter module on the LVX that when I would play it, I was like, this does not sound like when Alan plays it. And like, I cannot get this delay. So the first thing I did once I discovered that was I actually just turned off until I was needing it, the filter module on every single preset. Because I was like, because I was like, I just need to get the bass delay sound, and then I'm going to figure out where I need it to be. It was just a learning curve for me of like, oh, I have everything. I don't need to have every module turned on every time to get a sound out of it. I can then figure it out from there. That was one of my aha moments in exploring the LVX. And now that I get that, I'm like, okay, now I can get anything I want out of it, and I don't have to just have Alan's hands on it.
These glorious hands.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of it. I mean, yeah, different guitars, different amps, absolutely different player. It's all of these things add up.
And you guys have enough control to kind of accommodate all those different things, whether you have big sausage fingers, like I joke with, but or dainty little piano player surgeon hands.
Yeah.
But all right, so rapid fire round. These are not hard questions. They are back to the basics at the beginning where we talked about you guys getting into guitar playing. That's really what this is about. So I think we'll just go, you guys can just go back and forth answering. We'll just ask each question. So I'll start, Alan, you go. So your first guitar pedal on your journey, what was it?
My first, I mentioned before that I got to borrow from my uncle. Cool Uncle Dave let me borrow the Crybaby Wah and the ADA flanger at the same time. And I loved those. I think the ADA flanger is still my favorite flanger.
That's a pretty good one. I feel like flanger is something that should be explored. You guys should make a flanger. Anyhow, continue.
We do.
Well, there's one in each one.
There's a module for it.
Yes.
Yeah, it was different in each one. Yeah, the Enzo X has a cool. I did a lot of work on the flanger for Enzo X. It's pretty capable. It does a lot of interesting stuff. My first pedal was a little Arian distortion pedal. It had a little red, Main Japan, Max Arian. I can't even remember the name of it, but it was their red distortion. It was the first one.
I'm definitely going to deep dive that for referencing.
Yeah, I was playing through my dad's. I had a Japanese Squire, and I was playing through my dad's accordion amp. His made in Milwaukee floated tone accordion amp. Yeah, and so I couldn't push it no matter how hard I played. I just couldn't turn it up all the way. Just could not get the thing to clip. So that was the first thing, was like, I'll just buy a distortion pedal. But I didn't know anything, and I got that Arian
awesome.
Distortion.
Fantastic.
All right, next question. What is your current favorite pedal? It can be yours too. You don't have to. It can be a Meris product. That's fine too.
Ooh. Yeah. Well, I'll say my pedal board right now is just LVX and then Mosstortion clone from Nordland.
Oh yeah.
I forget the exact model number of it, but it's just an overdrive and an LVX, and that's like my rig right now.
I mean, what
just
more
for
do you need,
playing
really?
with the band. It's enough for me.
Yeah.
Is it the MT11?
Yeah, that's it. MT11, and it sounds awesome. And it's an Ibanez Moss Distortion, pretty faithful clone. I think I never owned one of those as a kid. I remember seeing them, and yeah, it sounds good. And I just run it into like a JCM 800, or I just got an amp from Alex from Science Amps, and that amp sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of bands that I like, their rigs are pretty simple, and I use a lot more. I use a lot of delay normally, but if I'm in more the studio setting, then I'll use a reverb. But usually live with the band is just delay.
Nice.
I do also say often, the more I play and the more pedals I try, the less I actually need to write music. It's something I've discovered. I'm like, oh, I have all these things. I just only need like delay, a drive, and maybe like something modulation-y in between there.
You're too practical though, Paul. There's a lot of fun of having just like a lot of pedals too.
Oh, I have so many. Right?
It's not about needs. It's about
right.
wants and desires.
Yes.
See, Terry gets it, Paul. What about you, Angelo? What's your favorite?
Yeah, so my home rig, I have a pair of Fender Deluxes that I run in stereo, and I have
nice.
our stuff in stereo. And then for distortion and for drive, like I'm a big Alan Holdsworth fan, also a big Zappa fan, and the distortion that I tend to gravitate towards is the combination of compression and distortion. And so I always have a compressor on, pushing, and I've had on my board for the longest time. We're really good friends with another Line6er, George Trips. He has the Way Huge Fat Sandwich, and pushing that with compression makes it sound completely different. It feels like a completely different pedal, and so that's kind of like a core tone, I guess, with the Deluxes. And I have it in a switching rig, so I can turn it on and off, and just go straight to the Deluxes. And Way Huge, yeah.
Yes.
Right. Actually, funny that you bring up Way Huge, because I've been a Way Huge fan for as long as I think they've been around.
Yeah.
And actually, I recently got
what is
Alan
that, like
into Way Huge.
1992 or something like that, or 93?
I've had like every one of their pedals at some point in time.
Oh, wow.
Like,
Wow, yeah.
I don't have them all currently.
Yeah.
Paul, did you say that you're a Way Huge fan?
Oh, nice, dude.
They're good. My favorite Way Huge is on the Geisha drive. Right?
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a really good one.
They're really cool pedals, and I think actually in the tube amp world, I feel like all of the drive and fuzz stuff they have pushes a tube amp just like perfectly. It just like does it right. And I've never
George obsesses over that. Yeah, he's a really good friend and really generous guy. I'll visit him from time to time in his lab in Burbank, and he's always trying out different transistors and trying out different gain stages, and
awesome.
He's very meticulous about it. He makes good stuff.
Yeah, George is a guy with good taste, so everything he does
absolutely
sounds good.
We just got the Tradies. The Way Huge.
Oh, nice.
Right?
Yeah.
I got that. Well, Paul said he wanted to get it, and me, credit card. All right, here we go.
I specifically wanted to get it to see if we could model some of it on the Enzo X, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
Because that's kind of our, just for context for you guys, like we will like play around with stuff. I'm like, can we do this on any of the Meris stuff? Let's see if this pedal can. Sometimes it's actually really. Sometimes there are pedals that are so far afield that it's like, even if I use every module, I can't quite get it. And sometimes it gets close enough for government work. So. But yeah, the Atreides was actually just a recent Enzo X. Like, let's try that. It's a really fun one.
Yeah, that one's a wild one. That one's got some wild choices in there. It's really gnarly pedal.
Also, Dune naming convention speaks to me no matter what. So
huge.
Yeah.
All right, last question. And I feel like we've touched on this throughout, and we usually do when we have these conversations because it's fun to just talk about gear and music with people. But who inspires you to try new gear? Is it an artist? Is it another builder? When you guys are like, I want to try a new thing. And I also always usually put the disclaimer of we're all subject to social media marketing or marketing in general nowadays. So it could be an influencer, if that is the answer as well.
For me, it's like it's usually artists. I grew up loving Andy Summers, so I always was just dying to know what he used. And then there's like recently one of my favorite metal guitarists. I was doing the deep dive into what his rig was in the 90s, and I was trying to replicate that. Bill Steer is that guitarist, and I think for me it's that, but that's more from growing up and being influenced by people. Now it's more like I'm in this world where we're creating our own stuff, so it's hard to kind of take myself out of that perspective.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's what's nice is Terry and I go to a lot of these different events or pedal and synth shows, and sometimes it's fun to cross pollinate and kind of run across just different things that are out there and kind of get inspiration. This company, is it Melbourne Synth?
Oh yeah.
They just make some really wild motorized encoder user interface stuff, and so I think a lot of times when I'm checking out something new, it's kind of like direct exposure because of these events we go to in New York and all over the place.
We're friends with a lot of different pedal companies too. So
yeah,
we trade back and forth,
100%.
Try each other's stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's the best. Yeah. I do like in the boutique pedal community that everybody's kind of like homies and shares, and you'll see like a Chase Bliss pop up somewhere, and it's like, oh look, they're friends. Like I know you guys I think had something in the mystery boxes that were an insane undertaking at the holidays.
Yeah.
So that was really cool.
Yeah, it was Ottobit Juniors. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. No, that's
and CXM 1970 as well too.
There's a few CXMs in there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, actually, I as far as artists, I shared this when I think I mentioned this when Gina was on, but I can't remember if it was in the episode or because we also ended up talking afterwards for quite a bit because we just got nerdily into like sci-fi things and books and then artists. And I actually first came across you guys through Nick Reinhardt of Caramelos, who I grew up really enjoying his sound and listening to his music as a kid from the East Coast, being like, man, this stuff is like different.
I love
so actually the video he did on the Ottobit Jr, I actually like bought one like immediately afterwards because I was like,
nice.
Oh, okay,
That's
well, this is a cool
hear.
weird thing.
Yeah, Nick, it's cool that we know Nick now because I was a fan of the music first, and then when we were still in LA and our office was in Van Nuys, I invited him over just because I liked his music. I loved it. First time I heard Caramelos, it was like, one of those things that changes your brain because you've never heard anybody play like that before.
Nope. And also talk about a rig that's the opposite of our minimalist ones.
Yeah, I mean, and he uses all those like every pedal is like important for a certain part of the song, and and then I invited him over. We had lunch, and then kind of just became friends from there. So that's
the best.
Really cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, gents, thank you so much for hanging out with us for quite a while. I really appreciate it. I feel like if one of us doesn't stop it, it's just going to keep going.
Yes, because I want to keep talking about other stuff now. But
and I know we're early in the cycle, but so I won't ask you what's coming next. I won't do it, but I will say that if it's Ottobit Senior, you can deviate from the X series and use Senior. Just saying.
Well, I also want to say if you guys do that, being able to control the auto bit more and be able to visualize the sequencer would be my dream because the pedal is awesome, and I'm always like, man, I wish I knew what I just did.
Yeah. So. Yeah, Ottobit Senior is kind of in my heart already taken by the Ottobit 500 series module.
I feel that. I feel like the Junior is the nomenclature's that way, so it has to be.
And we did that because of like Pac-Man Jr. and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Donkey Kong Jr.
Yeah.
Is there a Pac-Man Jr. or just Miss Pac-Man?
There's Miss Pac-Man.
That's what I was thinking.
Oh, there you go.
Donkey Kong Jr.
Yeah.
No, I actually I got around the same time the Ottobit Jr. and then the Teenage Engineering, the arcade pocket operator, which is like similarly vibed, and running that. Those little things are cool because they sound huge when you plug it into the actual setup. Yeah. And I was in just it crushed video game heaven, making all sorts of little noises and
Fun.
making loops with it and just like destroying it. It was really fun. So
yeah, it's really good for percussion sounds too. Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, running a drum machine through it is super
fun.
cool.
Yeah.
So
Well, again, Terry, Angelo of Meris, thank you so much and for being here, but mostly thank you for the ingenuity and creativity that you've brought to our world as effects people. And just thank you. I mean, it seems simple to say, but I have gratitude for what you all have done, and it's opened up a lot for me, and I know other people as well. So thank you very much.
yes, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
We appreciate you having us on here.
100%. Yeah. No. Yeah. Thanks for the love. It's and thanks for just showing people all the different capabilities. So yeah, we really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Anytime.
All
All
right,
right, everybody. We'll talk to you next week. Bye.
See you.